What's going on, guys? If you've been paying attention to the news and the cryptocurrency world lately, it's been pretty bad. Earlier in the year, you had the Terra Luna issue where basically a top 10 cryptocurrency pretty much went to zero, where a lot of people, retail investors as well as institutions, had exposure to UST and Luna, and it caused pretty much a market-wide contagion in crypto. And if that wasn't enough, Bitcoin's price has been in the tank for months, and just over the past few weeks we've heard of a lot of major crypto companies having problems, pausing withdrawals, and pretty much scaring anybody that has any money on their platforms. And this has happened with companies like BlockFi and Voyager, but the one that everyone's talking about and the one we're going to talk about today, Celsius. If you don't know what Celsius is, it's kind of like a crypto bank where you can buy cryptocurrencies there, you can store them there, you can earn additional yield on your crypto there. And that's part of what we're going to talk about today. Peel the curtain back a little bit on how those things work, why there's risk involved, and how that risk turned into people not being able to withdraw their money. The Wall Street Journal had a really good article the other day about the things that were going on at Celsius, and it gave a little bit behind the scenes look as to the type of issues they were facing and what are causing the problems that they're dealing with. And so look, the real catalyst that kind of started this snowball is the macro environment that we're in right now. All the money and all the liquidity that was pumped into the market over the past couple years, asset prices have been inflated across the board. And crypto is obviously no exception. We had huge booms in 2021, pretty much across the whole asset class. It didn't really matter what you put your money in, it was going up. But once that money started getting taken out of the ecosystem, crypto is one of the areas that's crashed the hardest. And now that that's happened, a lot of these companies and protocols are being shown to have not so great risk management, and it's impacted their ability to be solvent. And part of the reasons why those things happen is people have a tendency to over leverage themselves across the cryptocurrency ecosystem. You're taking in cryptocurrency in the form of Bitcoin, you're lending it out, you're getting yield on it, but when the whole market collapses and everything drops 80 to 90%, it's going to impact pretty much everything you do. So before I talk about the things that were happening in Celsius, let's talk a little bit about how these yield products work. If you've ever looked at companies like Celsius or Voyager or BlockFi, they always say, earn yield on your crypto. And people would make jokes about how bad your bank interest is compared to putting your money into a crypto account. And it's definitely true, right? The yields that you can get in one of these crypto accounts were way better than anything you can get in a bank. The problem, though, is that nobody explains the risks of how those yields get there. And there's a life lesson in this to remember always. There's no such thing as free money. If you're getting a good yield, best believe you're taking a risk. Anytime that a bank is giving you interest on your deposits, it's because they're able to make more interest on the loans that they lend out. So they're not doing it out of the kindness of their heart. They're doing it because they're taking your money in, they're lending it out at a higher rate, and they're giving you a small sliver of it and keeping the rest. And the crazy part is, that's how the crypto yields work as well. But what they don't explain is, what are the risks you're taking with the loans that are being lent out with your money? And I'm not saying that I'm an expert in exactly what all these companies are doing, but just as a general idea, what's happening is you're depositing your crypto on their platform. And let's say you deposit Bitcoin and they say, we'll give you a 2% yield on your Bitcoin. You're like, wow, 2%, that's amazing because I'm getting 0.01% in my bank account. But how they're able to get that yield is they're lending your Bitcoin to someone else on the other side. And that person on the other side is taking a loan in Bitcoin and paying an interest rate that's higher than the yield that that company is giving you. So it's kind of like the bank example. They're saying, I'm gonna give you 2% on your Bitcoin. Then they're charging an institution on the other side of that trade, maybe 5% in order to borrow that Bitcoin. So when everything in the market is happening the way that it normally does, everybody's fine. They have their risk management models, the loans get paid back for the most part. You might have some losses here or there, but nothing that no one can't handle. They collect their 5% interest, they give you 2% interest, they keep 3% interest. And I'm not saying that these are the real numbers. I'm just using them as an example to show you kind of what's happening. And so in that scenario, everybody's happy. You got your 2%, the institution on the other side got their loan, the company in the middle got their 3% cut. Everybody's good. Everybody's making money. But then what happens when the global market comes down? Well, now all of a sudden, that institution on the other side of the trade, maybe they can't pay back that loan anymore. And maybe a bunch of the institutions on that side aren't able to pay back that loan anymore. Plus, the assets that they put up to secure that loan have now taken an 80% drop in value. Not only that, but maybe that company was using assets to be able to earn extra yield in other places like Anchor Protocol. Anchor Protocol was where people in the Terra Luna system were getting 20% APY on UST. And so now what you have is this whole big cluster of crap going on to where the institution that borrowed the Bitcoin that you deposited isn't able to pay it back anymore. So this company doesn't even have it to give it back to you anymore. And any reserves that they had to be able to pay back their customers are also in crypto assets and are also now worth 80% less than they were. And so to go back to Celsius in the Wall Street Journal article, this is exactly the type of thing that was happening there. So they talked about when banks lend out money, they do it in a way that's over collateralized. Mortgages are a good example, right? And what Celsius was doing is they were allowing their business borrowers to only secure their loans about 50% on average. So obviously, being a lender that has a lot of loans that are under collateralized is a super risky business. But they weren't telling you that that was the amount of risk you were taking when you were getting your 2% yield. And then what Celsius was doing is they were taking those assets and then borrowing against them again. It's called rehypothecation, where you're basically using an asset more than once. And what Celsius was doing with that borrowed money is then putting it into other crypto ecosystems to earn more yield. And what they were doing were things like staking. Staking is when you lock up your assets for a period of time and you get extra yield on them. And while that sounds great, and staking can actually be a good way to earn extra yield on your crypto, the problem is if you're staking with borrowed money that you need to secure other loans, you're losing liquidity because depending on the staking rules that you agreed to, you may not have access to those assets. And if you're using those assets to secure user funds or loans, you may need to have access to them. So anyway, there's a lot of other things they talk about in that article about what they did. They had a bunch of money in Lido staked Ether, which also had a little bit of a liquidity crisis with everything that was going on. So there were just a lot of things compounded that put the Celsius ecosystem in a lot of risk. And that's why even right now today, users still can't withdraw their funds as Celsius is trying to work through options. So all that being said, what does a Celsius situation mean for Bitcoin? And even though I see a lot of Bitcoiners on Twitter kind of cheering the Celsius thing, like, hey, we told you so, always keep your Bitcoin in cold storage. I mean, I get the point, but I don't necessarily agree with that sentiment. I think even though I never used Celsius, I used others like Gemini Earn before, I've used BlockFi before, I've used Anchor Protocol and DeFi protocols before because I like to try things. Even though I didn't use Celsius and even though it's clear that they made some very poor decisions in terms of risk management, I don't think that them going under is a good thing for Bitcoin. Even though I think most people should hold their Bitcoin off of an exchange, put it in their own wallet, I also realize that not everybody is ready to do that, and not everybody is ever going to be able to do that in some cases. And I talked about that in a previous video of how I would never expect my mom to have a cold storage device and manage her own keys. That is just not in the realm of possibility for her. And I think if Bitcoin is ever going to get to mass adoption, in my opinion, you're going to need custodians because most people will want help and not want to trust themselves with losing all their Bitcoin. Now, that being said, the hope is that the custodians aren't doing a bunch of risky stuff with user funds like Celsius was doing, but I still think good custodians are going to be needed. And part of why I think the Celsius issue hurts Bitcoin is because it's another news article that's out there that's going to deter people from trying Bitcoin. It's going to deter them from wanting to look at it or get involved at all because they just don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with all this crazy stuff that's going on and worrying about if their money's safe or not. And when you add on top of that, the fact that it's happening across the whole system with BlockFi and Voyager and the stuff that happened with Terra, I think a lot of the excitement that had been built over the past couple years for Bitcoin and crypto in general, I think has been pretty much wiped out and then some because of the things that have happened over the past 3 months. But anyway, if you have any of your Bitcoin or any crypto on a trusted third-party platform, my advice is if you're comfortable enough and you're knowledgeable enough to get them off into cold storage into a wallet that you control, I highly recommend that. It's just such a crazy time right now that I wouldn't trust any of my Bitcoin or any crypto on any other platform other than my own wallet. That's all I have for you guys today. If you have any questions about Celsius or any of the things going on, put them down in the comments below. If you guys want to watch more videos about Bitcoin and financial independence, click on these videos on the end screen. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.